Good morning, everyone. Today marks the start of public examinations being conducted by the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission in Operation Almas. Under Section 64 of the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission Act, Ms Sullivan, you've been appointed as counsel assisting the Commission. I'll begin by taking appearances from legal representatives, and then I'll make some brief opening remarks, and then Ms Sullivan will give an opening address. After that, we'll have a brief adjournment before the first witness is called. So, appearances.
Smart, S-M-A-R-T-T, for the Commissioner and Mr Cotter, and I appear with Mr Fowson from the New South Wales Police Force.
Thank you, Mr Smart.
Please the court, my name is Wilcox. I appear for Ms A.
Thank you.
Jardine, I appear for Mr B.
Thank you.
Harris for Officer C, Commissioner.
Thank you. I think Mr Fishpool is here observing from the Professional Standards Command, is that correct?
Yeah, Commissioner, my name is Bob Chico Malayan. I appear on behalf of the officers that are going to give evidence as I understand Casa, Chapman and Tanner.
Thank you. So Operation Almas is an investigation under Part 6 of the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission Act, and it stems from the tragic death of Lindy Lucina on the 3rd of January 2023 in Ballina. I want to begin this morning by acknowledging the loss experienced by Ms Lucina's family. As we consider these events surrounding her death, it's important to remind ourselves of the role of this Commission. It is not to decide who has caused the death of Ms Lucina. Justice Rothman has already convicted Robert Huber of Ms Lucina's manslaughter. It is not to consider the manner and cause of Ms Lucina's death. That's a matter for the coroner. The role of this Commission is to consider the police response to a 000 call made on the 3rd of January that a woman was being bashed behind the Salvation Army building in Ballina. So the Commission will explore the actions of the radio room staff, the response of police on the ground, and the decision by police not to declare a critical incident. Questions about the police response have also been asked by Ms Lucina's family, by the media, and by the Honourable Sue Higginson MLC in a letter to the Commission written in July 2025. As we conduct this investigation, the Commission is aware that any investigation which occurs after a tragic event such as this must be careful not to fall into the trap of hindsight bias. What we know now may not have been known to those who were making decisions on the ground at the time. Of course, if there is evidence of serious misconduct or agency maladministration, we will deal with that. But our focus in this investigation will be on looking for opportunities for improvement in policing practices so as to foster public confidence in the work and integrity of the New South Wales Police Force. There will be 9 witnesses called in a series of examinations. And as I've said, the Commission has decided that these examinations should occur in public, having regard to the factors set out in Section 63, subsection 5 of the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission Act. The Commission has also decided that 5 of those witnesses should be given pseudonyms, and they will be known as Ms A, Mr B, and Officers C, D and E. And any witnesses who are referring to other police staff who are subject to a pseudonym should also use those names in their evidence. Under Section 176 of the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission Act, I've made an order that there is to be no publication of any information or image which will identify those witnesses, and that reminder will be repeated at the beginning of the evidence of any of those witnesses. All exhibits will remain confidential unless otherwise specified. And finally, I'd remind anyone in the room today that there's to be no filming or recording of the Commission's proceedings. However, the transcript of the evidence will be posted on the Commission's website as soon as we can practically do that. And unless the witness is subject to a pseudonym, their evidence will be, a video recording of their evidence should go up on the Commission's website, subject to any difficulties that might occur in relation to the use of pseudonyms. I think those are the marks I wanted to make at the beginning, Ms Sullivan, and I'll pass over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Today, as you have indicated, we commence public examinations in relation to Operation Almas. And as you have indicated, this is an investigation conducted pursuant to Part 6 of the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission Act. I'll now provide a brief opening statement by way of context for the examinations that will follow over the next 4 days. My opening will be in the order of around 30 minutes. The relevant events concerning Miss Lucina's tragic death occur in Richmond Police District, which covers some 10,870 square kilometres in this state. It's comprised of 13 police sectors and provides a response for 15 townships. And there are 3 main 24-hour police stations, namely Lismore, Ballina and Casino. Now, to set the scene for the relevant night shift on Tuesday, 3 January 2023, it's important to understand something about the resourcing, and it appears to be as follows. In the Ballina sector, we understand there was the mobile supervisor, that's the officer known as Officer C, a station officer, a custody manager and 1 car crew, that is AO 18, Alstonville 18, which was comprised of a senior constable and a probationary constable. So that's some 5 staff rostered for the Ballina sector. In the Lismore sector, there was a supervisor, a custody officer, a station officer and 2 car crews, that is Lismore 15 and 16, some 7 staff in total. In the casino sector, there was a supervisor, a station officer and 1 car crew. And then in the lower rivers sector, there was Coracai and Woodburn, 2 officers, each in separate vehicles. Woodburn 29 was Officer D, and Coracai 122 was a further single alpha unit. Those officers were rostered from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. There was also for the shift, as is the normal course, a duty officer, a chief inspector, rostered from 2 p.m. to 12 p.m, or 12 a.m. rather, midnight. So as you have indicated, Commissioner, there are 5 witnesses who have the pseudonyms. Those are the 2 senior communications operators, that is Miss A and Mr B, who will give evidence today. The 2 patrolling officers who attended the relevant incident, they are known as Officers C and D, and then the duty officer, Officer E. And for completeness, I note that shift changeover from the day shift to the night shift occurs at around 6 p.m. Coming now to the events of Tuesday, 3 January 2023, at approximately 7 p.m. that evening, the New South Wales Police Force received a 000 call from a then unknown male informant who reported, quote, "There's a man bashing the hell out of his woman at the back of the Salvation Army in Ballina." That address, the Salvation Army in Ballina, is located between Tamar Street and Holden Lane, and it's a short distance from Ballina Police Station in the order of some 550 metres. The call was passed from the Telstra 000 operator to the New South Wales Police Force Police Link telephonist, and we'll now play that recording, please. That is tab 1C, the initial call.
Seconds.
Emergency, please. Ambulance.
Hello, is this a Ballina police station?
Thank you.
Because there's a man bashing the hell out of his woman at the back of Salvation Army in Ballina.
This is the police ringing now.
Police, go ahead, Telstra.
Telstra vehicle is just disconnected. Job number 2116543. Wanted the Ballina police station.
Yep. Male, female?
Male. He said someone was beating the hell out of his woman.
Okay. No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So the telephonist then calls back the informant. Can we play that call, please, at tab 67?
Hello, this is James from Police Emergency. You tried to dial 000.
Sorry?
Your phone dialed 000. Did you repeat?
Yeah, I'm just letting you know. There's a woman get bashed behind Salvation Army in Ballina.
Okay,
And that's all I've got to say. I don't want to be reported or anything, but just giving you the heads up.
I just needed
I told you where and what.
And then the informant hung up. So at 7:03 p.m, the telephonist who received that call entered that incident into what's known as the police CAD system, that is the computer-assisted dispatch. And given the limited information that had been provided by the informant, there were a further 2 callbacks to try and obtain further information, but the informant didn't answer, and those callbacks were in accordance with the applicable procedure. The information received was classified in the CAD system by the telephonist as a priority 2 concern for welfare incident. And so the CAD incident information was as follows. Behind the Salvation Army building, and the address was given, male stated a female, abbreviated to M, stated a female, abbreviated to FM, being bashed behind Salvation Army building, abbreviated to BLDG. Now, in terms of incident priority, we see that on the screen. In terms of incident priority, a priority 2 job is one that requires an immediate response by police. And the relevant police protocol states, respond immediately unless responding to a priority 1. It's defined as incidents where there is a serious threat to life or property occurring now requiring an immediate police response, i.e. armed robbery, violent domestics, serious assaults, person trapped in a motor vehicle, or urgent action is required to apprehend offenders. And such incidents should be preceded with a 2-tone alert by the dispatcher. The priority to be given to a CAD incident is initially entered by the telephonist who receives the 000 call. As we see here, it was a priority 2, but it can be changed by dispatchers at police radio. The telephonist also assigned the incident type to identify the category of individual incident, and this again can be changed by dispatchers, we understand, and the incident type is important because it can impact upon the nature of the police response. Now, in this case, the matter was classified as a concern for welfare incident, and this is defined as an incident, quote, where police or a member of the public have concerns for the welfare of a person or animal. There is another more specific incident type, that is an assault, and that is defined as actual or threat of force of any kind without consent against another person, and that incident category, as we see, was not used. Unsurprisingly, the New South Wales Police Force Radio Operations Group has very particular dispatch standard operating procedures, or SOPs, as they are colloquially known, and they set out the requirements for the timing of initial broadcasts and re-broadcasts of information based on the priority of the incident. The SOPs in force at the relevant time were dated June 2022, and in relation to receipt of a priority 2 CAD incident, the SOPs provide that the initial or the first broadcast should be made, or all reasonable efforts and attempts should be made to broadcast that incident within 90 seconds. And then in terms of subsequent broadcasts, the SOPs require that for a priority 2 incident, all reasonable effort and attempts be made to rebroadcast priority 2 incidents every 60 seconds. If there is no acknowledgement of a priority 2 incident within 5 minutes from the initial broadcast, the dispatcher is then to ensure that either the duty officer or the supervisor is contacted and a direction sought as to how to proceed. If that does not occur, the SOPs require that the incident is to be brought to the attention of the Radio Operations Group Shift Coordinator. So we know that at 7:10 p.m, that is some 7 minutes after the call was first entered into CAD, there was the initial broadcast for the incident behind the Salvation Army in Ballina, made over police radio. And that was on Channel P. It was preceded by a two-tone beep, which was in accordance with the requisite procedure, and we'll now play that first broadcast at 7:10 and 30 seconds, please. That's tab 70.
Ballina car behind the Salvation Army building, 73 Tamar Street, cross Moon Street at Ballina. Male stated a female's being bashed behind the Salvation Army building. The informant then terminated the call. On callback attempted, he stated, "I've told you where it is. I don't want to be involved." Swore at the operator and hung up. Second callback, there's no answer.
Thank you. Now, no crew acknowledged the broadcast at this time, or indeed for some time thereafter, and it appears that the crews in the Ballina sector were attending to other jobs in the broader area, and that included a mental health self-harm incident that had been received at 6:38 p.m, which was a priority 3 job, but that had tied up, in particular, the crew Alstonville 18, as well as Ballina 14 containing Officer C and Woodburn 29 Officer D. And then at 7:03 p.m, there was a job broadcast for an accident on the M1 near Newrybar, and that was a priority 3 job that was acknowledged by both Officers C and Officers D shortly after broadcast. Now, we know that the Salvation Army incident was next broadcast at 7:24 p.m. by the dispatcher, and we'll play that second broadcast, that is tab 70 at timestamp 3:24 and 30 seconds.
Car is concerned for welfare behind the Salvation Army, 73 Tamar Street, cross Moon Street at Ballina. Male stated a female being bashed behind the Salvation Army building.
Thank you. There were the 2 tones on the audio. They've just been cut out of that clip, but they're there. Now, that second broadcast is some 14 minutes after the first broadcast at 7:10 p.m, and we know that there's a third and final broadcast at 7:34 and 53 seconds. So 3 broadcasts in total for this priority 2 incident. And pausing there, I would simply note that the initial broadcast was not within the 90-second time frame specified within the SOPs for priority 2 incidents, nor were there the rebroadcasts at the frequency of every 60 seconds thereafter until acknowledgement of the job. And relatedly, it does not appear that the matter was escalated to the duty officer, supervisor or shift coordinator after 5 minutes of no acknowledgement in accordance with the SOPs. However, at 7:46 p.m, Ballina 14, the mobile supervisor that contains Officer C, asked police radio about the outstanding job in Ballina, and we'll play that exchange. That is at 7:46 and 15 seconds. That's tab 70, please. Thank you.
Who's on 14?
I'm reading 5 to Cassia, thanks.
Red and 5 to Cassia, copy. Ballina 14, go ahead.
You're right, just letting you know that we're back on. Woodburn 29 and I are back on from that job on the Pacific Highway. Traffic lanes are clear now. That vehicle's been moved off the road. Is that job in Fawcett Lane, Ballina, still outstanding?
I don't know about Fawcett Lane, but we've got a priority 2 behind the Salvation Army, 73 Tamar Street, cross Moon Street. It's outstanding.
Yeah, right, yeah, that's, I'm just thinking where Salvation Army is. I think it's the place I'm speaking of. Well, I'll head there, have a look.
Okay, response ETA.
Right, I only had the one call. If so, then I'll be blue in probably 10 minutes.
Blue and 10 it is. Woodburn 29, are you going to go as well?
Yeah, affirmative.
Thank you.
Thanks, Blue and 10.
Woodburn 29 was an alpha unit, as I've indicated, that contained Officer D. Now, records indicate that by 7:55 p.m, both crew had arrived at Holden Lane, which is the rear of the Salvation Army premises. And just for the purposes of orientation, just display some maps that indicate the location. It's tab 131, please. Possible to zoom in. You can see that's very zoomed. If we could zoom out, thank you. You can see there Holden Lane, and it's bordered by Cherry Street, and there's Moon Street up on the left. Those are the two intersecting streets. And we can see the number 73 is marked clearly. That is the Salvation Army building. Can be seen that there's a car park, some trees, and that's the location of particular interest. If we could perhaps go to tab 42A, just to show some larger pictures of the Salvation Army premises. And that's helpfully marked in red. Perhaps we might zoom in. Thank you. And I think if we can scroll through to the next photo within that tab, please. Thank you. Well, I think that's sufficient for present purposes. Now, shortly after arriving at Holden Lane, there was an exchange between Officer C and the police radio. And we'll now play that exchange. That is tab 70 at timestamp 3:54:41. Thank you.
Ballina 1-4.
Ballina 1-4.
Up at the rear of the Salvation Army on Tamar Street. It's actually going to be Holden Lane. I was close. What did the caller exactly say? There's no indication whether it's a house or on the street.
Stand by. Okay, so it just said behind the Salvation Army at 73 River Street. Male stated a female was being bashed behind the Salvation Army building. The informant then terminated the call. On callback, he stated, "I've told you where it is. I don't want to be involved," and swore at the AAO operator and hung up. Second callback and third callback were not answered. The call was made from a mobile phone registered to a David Cox of a Ballina address.
Copy, and just you said River Street, so Salvation's Army on Tamar or River?
Oh, sorry. The Salvation Army behind 73 Tamar Street, Cross of Moon.
Yeah, copy that. That will make it Holden Lane, and I know where the building is, so we're just patrolling that lane now.
Thank you. I'm pausing there. The name of David Cox was not correct. I just note that for the record, Commissioner. Now, Officer C in marked car Ballina 14 and Officer D in marked car Woodburn 29 then patrolled Holden Lane slowly, we understand. There was still natural light because it was daylight savings. And at 7:58, 25 seconds, Officer C provided radio with an update on the incident, and we'll now play that. That's tab 70 at 3:58:25.
Back on the air from Holden Lane, nothing sighted. There's numerous residents there. I'm sure we would have got more calls if there was something going on in the street there.
Copy. Woodburn 29, did you make it there?
Yeah, I was on 14. I'm back on 2.
Thank you. It's apparent from the statements that both Officers C and D provided that neither left their vehicles at any time during the patrol of Holden Lane, and it appears that the total time on scene in response to this priority 2 incident was in the order of some 3 minutes. Thereafter, so by around 7:59 p.m, both officers had called back on and went about their duties, including attending to other incidents in the sector. Now, of note, Officer E, who was the duty officer in the Richmond Police District from 2 to 12 a.m, was evidently monitoring police radio and assisting police by responding to incidents, making phone calls, checking in. But by around 7:40 p.m, Officer E had herself kitted up and entered her vehicle to assist police in the field, given how busy things were at that time. And in that vein, in a handover email that Officer E sent to the incoming duty officer at 12:14 a.m. on the 4th of January, that is about 15 minutes before police are aware of the death of Miss Lucina, Officer E writes in her email this, quote, "Poor Officer C got smashed between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. He did a great job down there. Lismore also had another run of MH, mental health jobs." So for broader context, Officer E has noted that around 7:03 p.m, that's when the CAD incident first comes in, she is actively monitoring in the order of 12 CAD jobs across the district. Now, coming to the events of early Wednesday, 4 January 2023, at around 12:30 a.m, some 4.5 hours after the initial 000 call, Robert Huber attended Ballina Police Station to report that he thought his partner had died. Now, as it happens, Officer C, amongst other police, was in the station near the counter when this report was made. Officer C recognised Mr Huber, having previously encountered him in connection with domestic violence charges that related to Miss Lucina. Specifically, on the 27th of December 2022, police had attended a caravan park in Ballina in response to reports of Mr Huber assaulting Miss Lucina. He was charged with assault occasioning actual bodily harm and common assault, and those were charges that Officer C had had some involvement with. Mr Huber was granted conditional bail and served an apprehended domestic violence order, which included the standard conditions 1A to C, that is not to assault, threaten, harass or intimidate the protected person, who was Miss Lucina, but also condition 4, which was not to approach or be in the company of the protected person at least 12 hours after drinking alcohol or taking illicit drugs. Also of note, Mr Huber had a history of domestic violence related charges against Miss Lucina in New South Wales. Returning then to the events in the early hours of Wednesday morning at Ballina Police Station, Mr Huber told Officer C that he tried to stop some cars on the way to the police station, quote, "because I think my missus is dead." Officer C asked, "Where is she?" And Huber replied, "Near the Salvation Army building." Officer C asked Mr Huber to take police to the scene, and Officer C then travelled alone in his vehicle, Ballina 14, to Holden Lane, whilst 2 other officers, being the crew of Alstonville 18, accompanied Mr Huber in their own vehicle. Now, once in Holden Lane, Huber led the officers to a gated area on the side of the Salvation Army building. And there, tragically, police found Miss Lucina's body in amongst items of clothing, baggage and other bric-a-brac strewn around. Now, for context, it is important to show some photographs. Of course, none of these are of a sensitive nature, Commissioner, but could we go to tab 73, thank you. This is image 3. Perhaps we could expand that, please, on the screen if possible. Thank you. This is a photograph from Holden Lane car park of the Salvation Army premises that shows the gated area to the left. We can go to image 4, please. It's a further close-up of the gated area to the left of the building. And that is in the nature of a pool fence. It was unlocked at the relevant time. Image 5, please. There's a further close-up. Image 6. There's the unlocked pool fence. Image 7, please. Thank you. This shows the other end of that area known as the child's area, where there was a soft red foam that can be seen. And so there's a pool fence at either side of that area. Then to image 7, please. And that shows the clothing, bric-a-brac items strewn in a separate section. Can we now go to image 11, please? That's an image that depicts the child's area showing the other end of Holden Lane. And now to image 12, please. And there we see a separate concreted area. The fence at the back is where Tamar Street is, so that's the front of the Salvation Army premises, but it can be seen that there are many items in that area. Image 14, please. Image 15. Thank you. And image 16. Image 16 shows that particular gate on Tamar Street. Image 24, if we could, please. That is image 24. Thank you. All right, for orientation purposes, we'll also show a CAD diagram of the Salvation Army building. This is tab 90. This was in fact annexed to Justice Rothman's decision in the Supreme Court judge alone trial. This shows the orientation of Miss Lucina's body. If we could expand that, please. Thank you. The red child's area can be seen there with the two pool gates at either side, and then we can see to the left of that the orientation of Miss Lucina's body. Her head is facing in a northerly direction. Thank you, Miss Monitor. Now, of course, at the time police attended the incident, it was shortly after 12:30 a.m. on the 4th of January, and it was dark. Mr. Huber was with police and, of course, was placed under arrest soon after Miss Lucina's body was found for the suspected murder of her. And as we know, on the 7th of July this year, Mr. Huber was convicted of the manslaughter of Miss Lucina by unlawful and dangerous act in a judge-alone trial before the Honourable Justice Rothman. On the 11th of September this year, he was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment with a non-parole period of 9 years. During the trial, there was a significant focus on expert evidence, in particular 2 forensic pathologists who had competing views as to the medical cause of death, and there was also some evidence taken as to the putative time of death. So in His Honour's decision of the King and Huber at 2025 NSWSC 714, Justice Rothman ultimately made the following finding as to time of death at paragraph 430. While I do not consider that the precise time of death is particularly important in these proceedings, I do not consider the description of Mr. Ledbetter of hearing what he thought might have been the deceased at 9:30 p.m. reliable. It's likely that the deceased died at or about 7:20 p.m. She may well have been deceased when Miss Hudson Moon saw her, but it may be that she died just after 9:30 p.m. Now, those 2 witnesses that Justice Rothman referred to, Mr. Ledbetter and Miss Hudson Moon, are of some significance to the chronology so far as it relates to the police attendance. Miss Hudson Moon provided police with a statement on the 5th of January 2023, and the important effect of that was that at 7:20 p.m, she was walking along Tamar Street, that's the front of the front area, towards the Salvation Army building in a westerly direction, and she then heard a distressed male and was able to peer through the slats in that gate. That's at image 24 that we just showed, where she saw a female lying down on some bedding. She assumed the female was asleep, but around this time she also saw a male get up and start walking around, and the obvious inference is that that is Mr. Huber. And this all occurs in that concreted area that was depicted in the photographs that were recently shown on the screen. Around 2 hours later, at 9:30 p.m, a statement from Mr. Leadbeater that he provided to police on the 4th of January 2023 refers to him attending the rear car park of the Salvation Army premises, that's on Holden Lane, and parking his vehicle. He recalled a woman yelling out to a man that he knew as Rob, and in fact both persons were known to him from interactions at the Salvation Army earlier that day. Mr. Leadbeater could see the man, who he knew as Rob, standing down the side of the building. Rob started yelling and swearing, and Mr. Leadbeater then left because he feared for his own safety. So this evidence provides an indication of the position of Miss Lucina and Mr. Huber at the time points 7:20 and 9:30 p.m, of course prior to Mr. Huber attending Ballina Police Station at 12:30 on the 4th of January. Now, following Mr. Huber's arrest for the suspected murder of Miss Lucina, a full-scale New South Wales Police Force homicide investigation commenced with a view to collecting all the relevant evidence. However, the circumstances of that initial 000 call to police at 7:03 and the subsequent delayed police response to the Priority 2 incident in the order of some 52 minutes before police were on scene at 7:55 p.m, was evidently a focus for senior police. And in particular, at 3:25 a.m. on the 4th of January 2023, Superintendent Scott Tanner, the Richmond Police District Commander, sent an email to senior police that included Acting Assistant Commissioner Tracy Chapman, who was then the Acting Northern Region Commander. And Superintendent Tanner provided details as then known to him about that initial attendance of police at 7:55 p.m. Some 12 hours later, at 3:11 p.m, Superintendent Tanner provided a further update to Acting Assistant Commissioner Chapman and other senior officers, which included a review of the staffing levels and the workload from the previous night. And it's very apparent that Superintendent Tanner had undertaken a number of appropriate investigations to inform himself about the circumstances of the matter, including apparently attending the scene at the Salvation Army himself. Now, ultimately, the issue of whether or not to declare a critical incident fell to Acting Assistant Commissioner Chapman, who was the Acting Northern Region Commander. She will give evidence on Friday, but it's anticipated that her evidence will be to the effect that she did give consideration to the New South Wales Police Force Critical Incident Guidelines, but ultimately formed the view that the matter did not fall within the criterion of a critical incident. Now, after discussions with senior officers, Acting Assistant Commissioner Chapman understood that there would be a domestic violence homicide review, and in that context she'd requested that that review include activities between the 7 p.m. call received by police right up until the time Mr. Huber attended the police station. And in light of that, she formed the view that no further independent review was required. Now, in that context, and as this is a public examination, I'll just briefly touch on the nature of a critical incident in terms of how it sits within the legislative schema under the LEC Act. So in very short form, a critical incident is defined in the Act as a matter that exhibits the features of a critical incident as set out in section 110. And for present purposes, a critical incident has two key aspects. The first is that an incident involves a police officer or other member of the New South Wales Police Force that results in the death of or serious injury to a person. And second, and relevantly, the death or serious injury appears to be likely to have resulted from any police operation. And a police operation is defined to mean any activity engaged in by a police officer whilst exercising the functions of a police officer other than an activity for the purpose of a search and rescue operation. But there is an alternative manner in which a critical incident can be declared. That's under section 111, 1B. And that's where the Commissioner of Police, quote, has other grounds for considering it is in the public interest to declare a critical incident. Now, as to this particular category of critical incident, the New South Wales Police Force critical incident guidelines state the following, and only the following. The Region Commander may also make this declaration, that is as to a critical incident, if they have, quote, other grounds for considering it is in the public interest to do so. This may include where an incident could attract significant attention, interest or criticism, and the public interest is best serviced by investigating the incident as a critical incident. Now, section 113 of the LEC Act provides that the Commissioner of Police is to ensure that the actions of police involved in a critical incident at the time or leading to the critical incident are fully and properly investigated by the New South Wales Police Force. And section 113 subsection 2 notes that a critical incident investigation is to include, amongst other matters, the extent to which members complied with relevant policies, practices and procedures of the New South Wales Police Force, the need, if any, for changes to such policies, practices and procedures, and also any systemic, safety or procedural issues arising from the actions of those members. Statistics that have been compiled by the Commission indicate that since 2017, 2 matters have been declared critical incidents pursuant to that category under section 111 1B of the Act. That is 2 out of a total of 297 critical incidents. Once declared, a critical incident investigation can be monitored by this Commission if it decides that it's in the public interest to do so. That's under section 114, subsection 1. Importantly, a critical incident declaration can also be revoked by the Region Commander at any time. That's section 112, subsection 3. Against that backdrop, I note that the circumstances of Miss Lucina's death on 3 January 2023 were not declared a critical incident on the 4th of January or any time thereafter. However, on the 7th of March 2023, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation reported concerns about the police delay of 55 minutes in attending the incident with this headline, quote, police's 55-minute response time in spotlight after woman's brutal death. Some 3 months later, on the 4th of June 2023, the ABC again referred to delay in an article entitled, "A woman was found dead in Sydney after delayed response to 000 call, but she's not the only one." The article noted that no critical incident investigation had been launched in Miss Lucina's case. However, that was contrasted with the death of Miss Tatiana Dokaturu, who was also referred to in that article in connection with some similarities in terms of a delayed response to a domestic violence incident. And that matter had, as the article indicated, been declared a critical incident. On the 7th of June 2023, this Commission wrote to the Professional Standards Command of the New South Wales Police Force in relation to that media reporting, raising concerns about the apparent inconsistency in approach regarding the declaration of critical incidents. And then by letter dated 4 July 2023, Assistant Commissioner Joe Cassar, who was then the commander of the Professional Standards Command, responded, and in short, he stated, quote, "I've reviewed the matter and I'm satisfied the response was appropriate." And he also noted that the ultimate decision as to whether or not to declare a critical incident was for the region commander, namely Acting Assistant Commissioner Tracy Chapman. And I note that since June 2023, there have been numerous media reports that raise concerns about the delayed response of police to domestic violence 000 calls, certain of which have again highlighted the absence of any critical incident investigation into Miss Lucina's case relative to other domestic violence deaths, including in 2024. Now, on the 31st of July this year, the Commission received correspondence from the Honourable Miss Sue Higginson, MLC, in relation to asserted failings in the police response to the 000 call about the bashing of a woman in Ballina on 3 January 2023, including in terms of the delayed response to a domestic violence call and on account of the failure to declare a critical incident. The Commission considers this correspondence to amount to a formal complaint raising concerns about police misconduct or serious misconduct under the LEC Act. And against that backdrop, I come to the essential scope and purpose of these public examinations, which is as follows, Commissioner. Firstly, to investigate the circumstances surrounding the New South Wales Police Force response to the 000 call made at 7:03 p.m. on 3 January 2023, reporting that a woman was being bashed behind the Salvation Army building in Ballina, including A, the radio broadcast and dispatch of police in relation to the 000 call that was received, B, the response, including the timing of New South Wales Police Force officers to the radio broadcast, C, the actions of the New South Wales Police Force officers who attended the location of the alleged assault, and D, the decision by New South Wales Police Force officers not to declare a critical incident in relation to the death of Miss Lucina and any review of that decision. But the second aspect of the public examinations is to consider whether any conduct is or could be police misconduct, administrative officer misconduct, serious misconduct or agency maladministration, and relatedly and importantly, to consider whether any systemic issues arise that could be areas for agency improvement. As you have indicated, Commissioner, these examinations will proceed over the next 4-day period from today until Monday, 8 December. The proposed order of the public examinations is as follows. Today we will have Miss A, a Senior Communications Officer, followed by Mr B, another Senior Communications Officer. Finally, today we will have Officer D via AVL. Tomorrow, it is 4 December, there will be Officer C, followed by Officer E, the duty officer. Then on Friday, it will be Superintendent Scott Tanner, who's the commander and remains the commander of Richmond Police District, and then Superintendent Tracy Chapman, who was the Acting Assistant Commissioner and Northern Region Commander at the relevant time. And finally, on Monday, we will have Assistant Commissioner Joseph Cassar, followed by Assistant Commissioner Peter Cotter, who is the current commander of the Professional Standards Command. Commissioner, unless there are any matters arising from my opening, I'm in a position to call the first witness.
Thank you, Ms Sullivan. No, and I'll step briefly off the bench while we arrange that. In fact, it might be a suitable time to take the morning tea break. Before I do that, I just wanted to indicate that our intention had been to upload the recording of Ms Sullivan's opening and my opening remarks to the Commission's website. If Council have got a difficulty with that approach, you're invited to make that approach now or after the morning tea break. I'm seeing a series of shaking of heads. Excellent. So we'll make that arrangement. Otherwise, witnesses that have been granted a pseudonym will not have their evidence, the video recording of their evidence uploaded for obvious reasons. We'll adjourn. We'll hear from Ms A when I return to the bench, we'll take a 20-minute morning tea break. And perhaps I could just remind any other witnesses that are here in court, with the exception of Assistant Commissioner Cotter, who I don't believe is here today, need to leave the commission room while Ms A gives her evidence. So people are entitled to return once their evidence is done, but not to be here beforehand. And I just invite legal representatives to remind their client of that. We'll stand adjourned for 20 minutes.